basketball coach, Jackson Vaughan. Coach, how you doing today?
Great, how are you?
Good, and we're all getting ready for your conference series with Pacific this weekend as your team will look to improve to 28-0 on the year with the 4 games this weekend, a 24-0 start so far this season. The best start in program history, which I believe was cracked at 16-0. But we knew how great this team was going to be. We knew it was going to be a great team, but just how dominant they've been has been incredible to watch weekend in and weekend out. Has it surprised you at all, just the fact of quite how incredible that this group has been this season?
Yes and no. You know, I mean, I think obviously the rise of Tyler McNeely has obviously been a huge part of that. Just because now we kind of have a obviously a pretty dominant 1-2 punch. And if you're pitching it well, you always have a chance to win. And not that we didn't always pitch it well last year, but a lot of times in the games that Tay didn't pitch, we tend to give up, a few more runs. And so then you're reliant on obviously matching those games and scoring runs. And now with Tyler, that hasn't happened very often. So even in games where we haven't hit as well, we're holding teams to obviously not a lot of runs. And we had a couple tough games against Claremont, for example, where their pitching kept our scoring down a little bit, and we were able to still find a way to win. And a lot of that was due to pitching. And then everybody's a little bit raised their game of some of our returners. So certainly, you look down the line, a lot of our kids are obviously have upped their game some from last year, which you kind of hope and expect will happen every year, but doesn't mean it will happen. So then that's contributed a lot. And we just had a knack this year for the big inning, which has obviously led to a lot of the knockout punches. There's been so many times where we've scored 4 to 7 runs in an inning, and effectively when you do that in a 7-inning game, you pretty much win the game right there. And so that's been a huge part of it too, where there's been some games that have been close, and all of a sudden we drop 5 on a team, and the game on the end doesn't look very close, but actually playing in the game, it felt close most of the game. So there's been some elements of that where some of the scores certainly look more dominant than maybe we felt like we played in that game.
And I want to circle back to the pitching, but another huge thing this year has just been the long ball. I mean, the power is very much there for this team. 28 home runs to lead Division III, and already within 5 of last year's total. That includes the postseason. How much does that contribute when you're trying to contend really at the highest level of national contention? Kind of referencing back to those teams you had in the late 2000s, early 10s that would just crush so many home runs. I mean, how much does that raise the ceiling for a nationally contending team?
I mean, it just helps. Home runs are indefensible to some degree, so you score runs without having to obviously get multiple hits in an inning. And but at the same time, we've never, even in the teams in 11 and 12, wasn't what we were trying to do necessarily in terms of like purposely trying to elevate a swing and trying to purposely hit a ball over it. I just think if you swing the bat well with good mechanics and do some things right, and you have the strength and the athleticism obviously to match it, then home runs typically come. And this year we have that group of older players that's kind of now in their second, third years that obviously are that core of kind of 4 has hit the bulk of them. And then we've gotten a few others from other kids, but so that makes a big difference. But it's still amazing how much the game has somewhat changed, because we have, I think, 28 and Emily Lepp hit 29 in that 1 year as one player, you know what I mean? And that team as a whole hit 108 or it was a lot. So
something ridiculous.
Yeah, and so and part of that was the game has changed a little bit, but also the long ball is not as much a part of the game as it was back then. So you still have to do everything else well. I think we look a lot harder probably besides home runs at on base percentage and our steal percentage, and also just our regular batting average is probably something we focus on a little bit more than the home runs. And we love the home runs and certainly take them, and they change games pretty quickly. But there's so many other things I think that kind of lead to whether you win a game or not besides that typically.
One player I want to zero in on is Bryn Nelson. Just been absolutely tearing it up this year. Obviously a player that came in and made contributions immediately. All region at second base as a freshman after playing mostly first through high school and club time. And then last year, a little bit of a regression with the offensive numbers. Still a really great season. But then this year, I mean, she's putting together a first-team All-American case right now. What's led to it kind of all gelling for her, both offensively and defensively?
I mean, Bryn's a really hard worker and super driven. She was a little disappointed with obviously how last year went, I think, and just in her family, there's super competitiveness with just her sister playing at Washington, and not that Bryn competes with her, but I think both those two are built the same way, where they just really strive for perfection. Bryn very much is that way, is a math-oriented kid. And so she worked hard this summer on her swing. She continued to work hard this fall on her swing. And she's just kind of made the goal to try to, maybe not, to put more balls in play on line drives and not to have as many flyouts. And we've really felt like her flyouts, that rate was really what kept her batting average down a little bit last year. And she's done an awesome job of that. So she's hitting obviously well over 500. And she has doubles and home runs mixed in, but she has a lot of singles. And so she's just done a good job of taking that flyout rate and reducing it, and then has made herself into someone that's really tough to get out between her high batting average and then even drawing some walks this year. Like her on-base percentage is well over 600. So she's done a great job.
Yeah, the OPS of over 1,400 is pretty ridiculous. Circling back to the pitching, you mentioned how terrific it's been to have this 1-2 punch of not just the all-time great Taya Kelly, but now this freshman Tyler McNeely, who has been terrific right off the bat. Had a couple of shaky moments at the beginning of the season, as expected for a first-year player. But the last couple of weeks, she's looked as strong as any pitcher in the conference, not named Taya Kelly. What's led to her being having so much success just as a freshman? She stays really composed, which obviously has helped her, but she's really also really driven to get better, and so she's really taken the advice that our pitching coach Amanda has given her, and she's kind of learned, I think, from each outing a little bit on what it takes to just do a little bit better. 'Cause she's done pretty well, but her location, ability to hit spots has really improved as the years went on, and so she's made it difficult for hitters to have continued success against her, and she adjusts pretty quickly when we have had an inning or two where maybe things didn't go as well. But it's hard to have that composure, but also like she came in and really has learned basically 3 new pitches since she got here that she didn't throw at all in high school. So just the fact now that we're throwing those pretty much all the time and relying on those as probably her 3 primary pitches is pretty impressive. Just how far she's come in such a short amount of time. And then with Taya, I feel like I've said this a couple times, but we've said pretty much everything that we've said about her. But I mean, really hard to argue that she's not the best pitcher in Division III right now. As she just keeps mowing through her 5th-year season here, could you kind of just put into perspective how incredible everything she's doing is?
I mean, she just has obviously so much experience, and she stays obviously, like I was talking with Tyler, just pretty composed all the time, and she's not much she hasn't seen at this point in her career, and she hasn't pitched, I would say, her best the whole time. I think in California she felt off a little bit, and velocity wasn't quite what it has been. And so, they didn't necessarily hit her a lot, but she gave up a few more hits. And obviously part of that was the level of competition we saw. And so I thought she picked her game back up and threw better, particularly this weekend against UPS. Obviously had 26 strikeouts in 2 games. But velocity was back, and she spotted the ball better. And so that's just kind of, even as a 5th year, there's always things to get better at and to kind of focus in and hone on in. And she knows as we get to the playoffs, the hitting gets better, but the strike zone typically shrinks a little bit as we get in the playoffs. Umpires tend to tighten up more and more as they feel like the pitching gets better. And so she kind of knows, what we're headed for and kind of what she needs to improve on as we kind of get into the last part of the year and hopefully, go into the playoffs and make a run.
In any sport, and you know this well from football too as well, when a team is this dominant, it can be hard to stay sharp down the stretch of the year. You got 4 Northwest Conference Series left. 2 of them are going to be pretty big tests against George Fox and the upstart Lewis and Clark. But how do you keep this team locked in and going every day trying to get better still, even though they have faced not a lot of resistance throughout this season?
It's not very hard with me. They hear from me a lot that we're not very good. And I think there is a lot of things we can improve on, and they kind of know they get judged at a pretty high standard. I think when you're in a program that's has expectations to win a national championship, you're really not. Your standards are just different, and you look at every inning and everything that goes wrong and everything that you're kind of doing that could be improved, whether it's a little thing on defense or whether it's something obviously whether we're doing pitching wise or obviously hitting is so hard. They know there's a lot of stuff we can get better at, and we're still young at a few positions, and we're still learning a little bit of a few things. We're battling a few injuries at a few positions where we've had a few kids have to step in and play, like this last weekend with Mira being hurt. So there's things that you just kind of was, I guess reminding the kids, and the year goes by fast. I mean, we only have 4 weeks left, and calculate that out. That's really basically 16 practices left, and those are 16 opportunities to get better. before really then your kind of life is on the line as you head into the playoffs. And so I think you just kind of remind them of those things a lot, and trying to take advantage of now what's the improved weather and the fun part of the year where you're not pulling the tarp and dealing with cold temperatures all the time, and just make the most of, the time they got left. And you have some kids like obviously Taya and Tyler and Savannah that, now we're down to weeks left in their amount of time to play softball, really ever at the competitive level. And so those things, I think you just try to remind them on a lot, just so they can, stay focused, but also like have the correct mindset and purpose kind of as you finish out the year.
Cats will look to stay hot this weekend back at home as Pacific comes to town for a 4-game conference set Saturday starting at 12 o'clock Sunday. 11 o'clock doubleheaders both days. We'll, of course, have live coverage for you on the Linfield Sports Network. Coach, thanks for the time. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.